Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man. So I've been kind of MIA for a little bit. I know. But before we get into anything, as always, I tell you guys that if you do want to skip the intro and anything that I say and get right to the analysis, there is a button, a little timestamp at the very, very tip top of the description. Tap on that, and it gets you straight to my analysis of the game. And you don't have to hear me say anything. Now, for all of those that do want to hear me say stuff, because it kind of goes with the video, welcome to Chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. I did put a poll out there not too long ago, so I don't have a lot of votes yet. If somebody wanted to see a game of mine versus a GM. Now, I actually misspoke, unfortunately. I have had times where I have defeated a grandmaster in the past. But it was on time, and one of the games I was getting pretty demolished in. The other game, it was kind of even, but, you know, they just had their time run. But they were doing me pretty dirty. So this is actually the first time that I've actually played a GM. It's the first time I played, like, a continuous match in a rated game with the GM. But this is the first time that I've actually played, kind of outplayed the GM in the positions that we got into and stuff like that. So it's like a true win. And so, like I said, we did play 6 games. I'm not the type to really just keep rematching people when I'm playing Bullet. I usually just kind of just play the games. But he kept rematching me. So we went and played 6 games. I did win 3. He won 3. He actually dropped his queen accidentally on one of the games early on. So, I mean, that was one of the wins. He resigned. But, I mean, it was still a win. I mean, you can't drop your queen. But anyways, I looked up, this player, and his name is Praveen Thipsay, and he is from India. And, he's a pretty decorated guy, I think. He's over 2,400 in Bullet on chess.com and over 2,500 in Blitz. So he's definitely up there. His Bullet in this particular, match wasn't very high. He is one of the higher GMs I played. I played a guy who was almost 3,000, or actually he's over 3,000 now. GM Illingworth of Australia. He is freaking annoying. He's beating me every single time we played. He's beat me like 18 times in a row. And it is really annoying to get demolished by somebody so many games and you just never can manage a win. I got close one game, but I ran out of time. So, whatever. But yes, so all of my people that are from the Philippines, I will say magandang umaga, mabuhay, kumusta na, aking makaibigan. Masaya ako makinig kang muli. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. Hello, you lit. I appreciate everybody so very much for stopping by. I think this is going to be actually a pretty short game. I don't have any notes written down. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head for it. So we're not going to be here forever. And I don't have like a novelty and different stuff like that. And when I go, I'm going to see if there might be a section that I might pause the video. I'll just have to go ahead and see. So if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look, see what happened in this game. So we got D4. So, I'm a D4 player. So, I mean, there's no secret with that. I used to play E4, but I did switch to E4 at the beginning, or D4 at the beginning of the year. I just think that, E4, I think that it's a slight edge for E4 being better. But I think that you get into more solid positions, and it's just kind of easier to play from a D4 perspective. So, I mean, for those of you out there that play E4, D4, put a comment down there and let me know what you think about it. But we do see D5. We got C4. We see E6. Knight comes to F3. And then we do have C5. And I am a Catalan player myself. But as you guys know, whenever you play C5, I mean, you do have the option of going G3. It's not very good in this particular position to do that. It is good to trade on D5 immediately. So we do have the Queen's Gambit declined. And it is the Tarrasch. Now, I mean, something I will actually say about this, though, is this is a little dubious for black. It's not the best, to, toss both of your pawns out immediately. Usually you end up with, like, an isolated pawn. So, I mean, you're not very developed. I mean, I do have my knight out, you know, I'm going to be developing another piece, as you'll see. Pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, and then I do have bishop to g5. And, I mean, I do have both of my pieces out, you know, and you are, you know, having to try to defend. Now, I actually start to misplay this really early on, and when I look back in my files, I should have known to play this correctly, but I played it wrong. And so you will basically be able to see in this game how, if you misplay the opening, how a GM will basically make you pay for it. So we see bishop to e7, and now I capture on e7, the knight takes on e7, and what I'm supposed to do, and which gives white a very nice advantage, is actually capturing here with the pawn. And as you guys can see, this does strap black with an isolated pawn. So you're going to try to, you know, push e3, knight to c3, just clamp down and make sure that this pawn doesn't become very dynamic. But I did not do that. I forgot my theory. I wasn't like super nervous, but you know, I hadn't seen this in a while, and so I just misplayed it. So I actually just immediately went e3, and so we see knight to c6, and I still have the opportunity to capture on c5 beautifully, and we pretty much will transpose kind of into the same position. But I did go knight to c3, and this does allow c4. So already, as you guys can probably see, I have allowed this c pawn to survive, and it is going to be a thorn in my side the entire game. This is preventing my bishop from developing like pretty naturally. So now I kind of have to go bishop to e2, and this d3 square is, you know, you know, this guy is going to be eyeballing, you know, this square for the entire game. So we see bishop to e2, and we actually see a pawn sacrifice that I actually accepted early on, but he got way too much play. I mean, he was able to swing his rook over to b8 and use this open file and just kind of get down in my kitchen, and that rook on the 7th was really annoying. So I decided not to do it this game. But as you guys can see, I mean, this structure, you can already see that I'm looking at it. I mean, it's like, how do I develop my pieces? You know, how do I try to, you know, progress forward at all? So I do castle trying to get into safety. And then rook does come to b8. You know, you're definitely threatening to push the pawn down. And the problem is, I mean, you don't have a lot of great, you know, squares to kind of go to. I mean, you can try to probably go something like this and swing it up this way, which is a possibility. But I do play rook to b1, and then bishop does come to f5. And I mean, this isn't my best moment in chess, man, because like, I mean, I seem like I'm doing well. You know, I've developed my pieces. I'm in king safety, but I just put my rook on a square that really you can't go to. And so I just move it back. So don't ask me what I'm doing at all. So we see castles by black. We got h3. I don't really want any bishop to g4s, but I mean, this is really kind of a position that we both get into where, I mean, he makes a legitimate move of h6. But you know, we're just kind of creating luft, which is something that is kind of like a natural move that you play when you're playing bullet. But I mean, it doesn't really super serve a lot of purpose because, I mean, as for me, for example, you're not really worried about bishop to g4. I mean, in this position, it's like, I mean, you have like full coverage. So it's not like it's pinning the knight down to anything. So we did go and create luft for our king. And I needed to try to get something rolling. I was like, man, you know what? Like, the only target really black has in their position is this d5 pawn. Let me try to see if I can drum something up. But the problem is, everything that I was doing is going to be, you know, abandoning my d4 pawn. You'll see that come up in a second. So the knight comes down to d2. We see a5. You know, he's just gaining more space on the queen side, which is, I mean, go ahead and do that. You know, your pawns are kind of pointing down in this direction, so that's where he's going to be attacking. Bishop comes to f3, and then we see knight to b4. This is actually kind of annoying because, like I said, this knight is really wanting to plop down into this d3 square. You know, you're also threatening stuff like this. You know, it's not a super threat, but I mean, you can see that black's pieces are really in my kitchen. So I do push e4, pawn takes e4, and then the knight takes e4, and knight d takes e4. And, you know, for the moment, I am protecting, you know, the d4 pawn, but, you know, he puts a stop to all of that with knight to d3. And, I mean, I have some problems, man. I mean, I have queen takes d4, I have knight takes d2, or b2. So it's like, what do you play in this position? Uh, you know, it's actually suggested that you go knight down to e2. But let me see. What do? I go queen to c2, which, I mean, it does protect my b2 pawn, but my d4 pawn is up for grabs, and he actually misses it. So he just plays b4 and does allow me to get this knight to e2 in. But, I mean, look at the position. I mean, this knight isn't really where you want it. This queen isn't where you want it, and it's actually kind of in a somewhat pin along this diagonal. So, I mean, you know, but the crazy thing is the computer is like, oh, you're dead even. So I was like, okay. I didn't feel dead even. The rook comes over to c8. I play g4. And, I mean, this isn't the best. I mean, this is weakening my king quite a bit. The bishop drops back to h7. I have rook f to d1. So I'm trying to survive. But as you guys can see over here, this bar is really low. So I'm clearly not playing this position correctly. So the knight comes down. So basically, the way black is thinking, all right, man, you know what? I got this bishop on a good diagonal, you know, kind of threatening the queen. This rook is good. You know, my knight isn't doing the most here, so let me try to improve it. So that's what he does. He moves the knight to d5. And, I mean, you know, what do you do in this position? I mean, the crazy thing is the computer's like, yeah, man, take on d3. Like, I guess that makes a lot of sense, but you're just giving up the exchange, man. So I drop my bishop back to g2. We see rook to e8, and I just completely just drop my knight. Like, I'm like, hey, man, my knight sucks. I don't like my knight. So I play f4. And, I mean, I don't think you guys have to be a rocket scientist. I mean, we could pause the video here. Like, what would you play if you were black? Exactly. Bishop takes e4. Just take the piece. That's literally what happened. This is a bullet game. So, I mean, you know, this isn't my brightest, this isn't my best moment in chess. Bishop takes e4, rook takes e4. And as you guys can see, I'm just down a pawn. I mean, I'm just down a piece in this position. And I don't even have any extra pawns. And then I just give away another pawn by going knight to g3. And then rook takes f4. So I'm suffering. I'm dropping the whole kitchen sink. Queen sidesteps over to e2. And then the queen comes into h4. And, I mean, the main problem in this position that I'm having is these knights, man. These knights are gigantically placed beautifully. And you know, they're hurting. So the king comes up to g2. I'm trying desperately to save my knight and try to protect everything with my king. But he basically shows me that all he needs to do is make a quiet move with rook to f6. And now, I mean, look at that. That's bad. The reason I'm showing this particular game is because last time I showed one of my games, I showed a game where I sacrificed and I brilliantly kind of like, you know, forced the win in there. So I promised you guys that I was going to show a loss. Now, I am going to show one of the games I won because I definitely, you know, like I said, we went 3-3. So this is definitely not my best game, but I am looking at the poll to kind of try to see, like, you know, what other people are saying. It's looking good so far for me to show another game, so I'll probably show one later on. But moving on, as you guys can probably imagine, it does go downhill quite a bit from here. There are a lot of problems that you have for black. Or for white. Not only do you have both of these knights that can hop into f4, so you directly have a problem with your king and queen being forked. You also have a situation where when the knight does come to f4, it is double threatening this h3 pawn, and there really isn't much that you could do about it. So I make the really crazy move. I literally never wanted to make this move at all because, I mean, this knight is perfectly controlling the square, but this isn't even anything that, I mean, really super matters. I move rook to c1, rook a to c1. And so, as you guys know, this doesn't solve any of the problems that I had in this position. These knights can still come here. This pawn is going to be hanging, and this is basically exactly what happens. The knight 5 goes to f4 with check. King goes down to g1. And the crazy thing is, he doesn't even take my queen with check. He takes the knight. So queen takes g3 with check. And, I mean, there's not a lot of options here. And it's like he adds insult to injury because, like, not only is my queen on pre, he doesn't choose to take it with the knight. So after I sidestep over to h1, he actually throws in, and this is This is sadistic. This is like he really, really wants to be mean. And this is something I would do, so I can't even be mad at him, man. Instead of just capturing my queen and just saying, hey, bro, I want a queen, I'm up a bunch of pieces, he throws in knight to f2 with check. And this forces me to give my queen away. So like I said, instead of just saying, hey, man, I'm not that mean, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And, I mean, you're still going to lose, but at least I took your queen. He forced me to give up my queen this way. So, man, after queen takes f2, I think you guys get it. Queen takes f2, and there's literally just everything you can possibly imagine in this position. Queen goes to g2 with checkmate. Queen comes up to f3. And, I mean, what do you play? It literally wants you to play this, the computer does. It says, hey, bro, you look. There is no white left in the bar. And look, it says M4. If you can see that. It says mating in 4. So, yes. GMs are hard. So, don't get it twisted. I managed to put together a legitimate game against him. So, I will be showing it next. But it is after queen came to F2 that I did, I did give up. I mean, I think you can't really blame anybody. Because let's say, for example, you say, hey, man, something that seems like it works. Rook to G1, right? This doesn't work at all. Because the queen is going to be checking on F3. And then the problem is you have to move king to H2. And then now you are mated. So there is nothing left to do. So this is not one of my better games. So as you can imagine, like I said, backing up. When we get to this position here, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this gives white a really, really solid advantage. And black has to try to work on getting this pawn back because it is not immediately capturable. You can toss something like this in, and that is fine. Knight is going to come to C3, and then you can snap here, E3, and I mean you can see that white is considerably ahead of black because all they really have out are the knight and the queen. And I mean, you have some bishop checks if you don't castle immediately. White is actually in a legitimate position. And black does have this isolated D pawn that it has to babysit. So that is the price you pay for not, playing correctly out of the opening. So it is not always a situation where you want to just be focused on learning the opening. But when you are playing certain people, they will make you pay if you do not know theory. So be wary of that. So that is that game. Like I said, I will be showing another game probably a little bit later on where I did win. So I'm going to go ahead and just disclaim that immediately now. But I appreciate you guys very much, and I'll see y'all next time.